Well, welcome everybody back to another podcast in what was a rainy Sunday morning in Suffolk. We've managed to get Issy from London. Are you London now, are you?
Yeah, just near, outside of.
Issy from London, she's come down and kindly offered to do a podcast with us. And like mostly we do about recovery, but we've been talking about sort of some dysfunctional family issues before the podcast began, which is of great interest to me and Issy, about family dynamics and the difficulties, how that affects recovery. So hopefully we can talk about some of that. But Issy's got an amazing recovery story, and again, for a young lady coming into recovery, that's not what you see too much of. I haven't over the 30 years that I've been around the room, so I'm sure you've got quite an experience to share about that. So, Issy, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And it takes a little bit of time to sort of work into to this, but I think it'd be nice if we start off with maybe a little bit about your background, where you're coming from, and sort of what led you into recovery. Is always a good place to start before we get into the meat.
Into the meat. Lovely. Do you know what's so funny is I was just sitting here thinking, okay, we're going to go back and cover that stuff, and I do. It's not that I find it hard to talk about it. I find it hard to remember, because I actually am now getting to the point where I think I'm 8 years sober, and with some other stuff that happened in the middle. But I'm 8 years off alcohol, and I'm getting to the point where I would have not been drinking for longer than I was drinking. So I find it hard to go back and remember who that person was. But
do you mind me asking how old you are now?
I'm 29. I'm 30 in May.
So you're just 21.
Yeah, I was 21 when I came to East Coast Recovery. Yeah. And I didn't have much left to give. It wasn't like I sort of took a little trip to rehab, like, oh, I'm just feeling a bit jaded, I need some help. It was like, no, I was on the sofa with the curtains closed, drinking vodka and just completely numbing myself. And I'd lost my job. My partner at the time went, I'm done, I'm going. And it was that moment that he walked out the door, I went, oh, I'm going to ask for help. Like, after him struggling, to be like, I'm going to help you. And I was like, yeah, he's going to help me. And then he sort of, the minute he let go, I was like, oh, I'm going to do something about this, which I've always found really interesting.
Very interesting for the enablers out there.
Yeah.
But it's amazing running a rehab, how often people come to rehab when their family have had enough of them.
Wash their hands. Yeah, it was when I had no more.
Usually when their mum stopped helping them, they tend to come into recovery.
Yeah. I'll always remember one of the people in ECR doing that thing about that the addict's like this, and they're crash landing, and then the enabler just catches them just before they crash. And I related to that a lot. It was like people would just kind of make it okay. Yeah. And then I would just go back out there and I'd be all right for a bit longer. And then it was the moment where I went, oh, okay, everyone's stepping away from me now. I'm alone. So I went, okay, I think I need to actually do something about this. But I don't know why I'm starting at the end of the story.
I think it's a neat place to start, and then go back maybe from there before you get into recovery, because I think it's not a bad place to see. That's where you ended up.
Yeah. And
then to maybe go back to what led you to that point. I guess go back a bit further, maybe in a childhood, because I think people always think addiction comes from sort of childhood and stuff like that. I'm not always sure about that. But
yeah.
I know people think.
I still don't. Do we ever really know where it comes from? Like I'm often asking that question. Like, I wish I knew what it was. Is there one thing that made that happen? Like, was it me and my partner talk a lot about hardware and software? It's like, are you predispositioned to it? Like, is there something within your brain that makes you because it runs in my family?
I think it's like, again, a good way, because again at the moment I think people are saying that, you know, like, is it Gabor Mate? It's all trauma is what's causing it, and I think there's a good argument for that. I just don't believe that's true. Again, not of everybody anyway. That's the best I could say, I guess. But I think trauma triggers it. But like, you might have 5 people in a family all having the same trauma, but only one of them may become an alcoholic and
I'm
addict.
one of 4, and I'm the only alcoholic.
Yeah, so I think there's a disposition in you to begin with. I think it's like a peanut allergy, makes most sense to me, but you'd never know you had it until you had the peanut. And then once it's triggered, because then it's the same in everybody that you meet with that problem. And I think there's, to say it's trauma, I wouldn't say that's the complete truth.
Well, will we ever know? That's the question.
Well, I think I do, but that's not my opinion.
Well, yeah, we know that.
But so maybe like go back to when you were sort of young and how you felt and what was going on for you.
I think it's funny when you look back at, like I recently found videos of me when I was little, and I was very like, I wanted attention. I always wanted attention. Like I was very into my musical theatre and acting, and I just wanted everyone to be clapping me all the time and to be like, yeah, you're amazing, like just constantly. And I guess it would be that thing of showing off. Maybe it's like, stop showing off, that whole thing. I think I heard that a lot.
Did you get that a lot?
Yeah. You're showing off, stop it.
That didn't make you feel happy then.
Yeah. And I went on to train to be an actor, so it's like I was waiting for the applause my whole life. So it was that, and I was a very happy kid, and then it was all good. Probably some family dysfunction sort of littered in there that I'm not incredibly conscious of. And then... Is
there some highlights of that? Like, tell me a bit about your mum and dad, if you're comfortable. I know that not.
Yeah. I think, so my parents are separated now, and I look at them and I think, God, how are you two ever together? Like, you just think they are so different that you sort of go, I just don't understand how that ever happened. But I think it was one of those relationships where they sort of met each other, were drunk, got married, and then had a kid, like literally from the honeymoon, and then had 4.
But that was your childhood then, though, weren't it? To have these 2 adults that were having a great time or not such a great time.
Yeah, actually for my childhood it was all right. At least I think it was. I'm not sort of...
I think what I find is there's a difference between having a nice house, food, and all of the material sort of things, but the emotional side of it, I think, is where the damage starts coming from. Because you get a lot of people that go, well, I know my parents loved me and I had everything, but I never felt quite loved. Now that could be because of you or them or a bit of both, that feeling of being wanted or cared for, being projected. Now I do find most people in recovery do have a low self-worth, that they don't feel good enough. I think that may be present to begin with, because again I meet people in recovery that also say, mate, I felt all of that and I still ended up in the same place you did.
Yeah, and I think I did too. And obviously I'm from a very middle class background, and we moved to Norfolk, got the big house, got the swimming pool, got all of that, and it was like there was family dysfunction underneath all of it, but it was to the presenting to the world, it was, look how great we are. And I became that front person. I was the eldest child. It was like, everything's fine here, and showing up, being strong, and everything's fine. Hyper controlling, because I felt maybe like the adults didn't have it under control, so that I had these 3 siblings that I would control a lot and move around, which I've had to kind of work on.
If there's a lack of responsibility, then you tend to get filled into that.
And it all came from, I think I had an intuition as a kid, which we were talking about earlier, as kids' intuition. I had an intuition that things weren't quite right, that mum maybe wasn't okay, from the minute my grandfather passed away. Because I remember hearing a conversation where someone was talking about, I don't care if you have 20 bottles of gin or 1 bottle of gin. And I remember that is ingrained in my brain for some reason, but knowing that mummy wasn't okay sort of vibe. And then having that sensation, having that feeling that mum's not okay, and then at the age of 10, being sat down when she was drunk and her literally being like, I'm an alcoholic, you need to help me. And me going, oh, okay, that's my life's mission. I have to help mum. Dad's off working to support this lifestyle that we've signed up for. So dad's in London and mum's kind of not okay. And that was the role. That was the role I took on, that I assigned to myself. I'm Superwoman.
Would you say that it was like a carer role? Or would you say it's like... See, I think that is that if they... I think responsibility is a very important thing to understand and to have, and for parents and children, and giving somebody too much responsibility, or there isn't enough responsibility taken for their emotional needs, their physical needs. And I think a lot of people don't understand the different levels of what you're meant to be responsible for, even in the children. It's sort of astounding. The more I've learned about, over the years of seeing people that have sort of had children and taken no responsibility for them at all. Might have sort of fed them and put a roof over their head, but that's about all that they got. You ever heard of the ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you'll have to look at them. And anyone listening, we've gone through it before, but there's 10 ACEs. And it's online, you can look it up, and I think even a lot of the government agencies and social services use it. But the 10 ACEs, it's like they go from sort of like parents splitting up, people calling you stupid, to all just up to abuse. And there's like 10 of them of varying degrees of trauma. But it said if you score over 4 out of the 10, then your chances of depression, suicide, addiction, obesity, diabetes, being a smoker, drug taker, on antidepressants, all of the things that you don't want, literally rise about 1,500%.
God, that's incredible.
Yeah. But again, when you actually look at it, you think, well, it's nothing you don't know. It's just kind of evidence.
But we minimise a lot of those experiences as well, because there's a lot of society that goes through that stuff in family situations.
Yeah, and when you understand the human brain and what it takes to make a healthy human, you can see how little ingredients, or the wrong ingredients, a lot of people were given. But a lot of that could be behind the facade of, nice house, nice clothes, holidays, all the stuff. But there's a real separation. Emotional separation. That is what we all ultimately are really seeking. Is that.
I remember, I will never forget, and I actually meant to say this to you earlier, that there are people wandering around in London that now use this analogy, because I used it all the way through my training at drama school, which was the he's only got one shoe thing.
Yeah.
Which you should tell it, because you tell it better than I do. I'm sure you talked about it in previous podcasts. Yeah. But once I accepted that about my parents or whoever, that they're doing the best they can with the resources that they've got, it did become a whole lot easier for me in recovery, because it was like, okay, like we're trying to break generational curses here, if you want to call them that, or we're trying to like stop that. I hope that to be a sober human being and an emotionally abundant human being for my kids, if and when I choose to have them, so that we stop this just like onward process of traumatizing kids. I don't know what you would define it as.
I mean, I don't know what the definition necessarily of trauma is, in the sense that I kind of understand it, but so using that analogy of the one shoe, it's like, once you realise that, your parents did give you what they had, and then you forgive them, and then you say to people, what's the problem? And say, oh, well, there isn't a problem. It's like, well, it is, you're underdeveloped. Mm-hmm. Now, you can't transmit what you don't have. So if you've not been brought up in a healthy emotional development, which will give you because again, everything you feel is you. Every feeling you have is you. When you get an uncomfortable feeling and you reject it, you're rejecting you, which is probably part of you from your childhood that reached a point in your development that rose up, wanted to connect with your parents, but they'd already shut that part of themselves down, because that part of them may have got hurt in their childhood. So it's like, we don't use them feelings. Now, if we don't use them feelings, we don't use them thoughts. So we don't have them conversations. Yeah. But it's them conversations that help you connect healthily with yourself. So if you don't have parents that are able to do that, you end up with blank spots. Yeah. And often hurt. And so now you can't, so that would be a neural network as well. That would if you're being developed correctly, you would develop neural pathways to be able to project that onto your children so that they feel loved, but they don't feel your love, they feel their love, they feel themselves, because everything they feel is themselves. So ultimately, you'd want someone to feel loved, but also know how to receive it and project it. But ultimately, they realise it could be produced in them. They don't necessarily need anyone else at that point. But I think when that doesn't happen and you don't know how to do it, you end up with blank spots. And you can't transmit something you do not have.
No.
So then when you have children, that will be denied them. And when their emotions come up or starting to develop and reach out, because it's your nervous system is what it is. It's reaching out into the world. But as it connects with your parent, which should accept it and then guide you through a healthy process with it, but they feel hurt and then they kind of slap you down.
Yeah.
And then you may repeat that 2 or 3 times or whatever, but then you'll realise these feelings aren't good feelings.
No.
To use.
And I do think that that's where, you know, the program that I'm so grateful that I got a big fat dose of at the age of 21. I had no way of dealing with with people, with the world, with feelings, I was just like this scribble of mess and colour and like just sort of blah, and that sort of managed to go, okay, so if you action these points, it gave me something tangible to work with and understand in order to start to put things into practice that would ultimately give me tools to deal with people and things, so that I didn't feel like I constantly felt like stuff was happening to me. It was like, ugh, and I'm so upset about everything, and I'm in pain, and I'm angry, and I don't know how to deal with any of this stuff.
How long had you been like? How long would you say you've been angry? What would you?
I think anger was a very acceptable emotion in
was
my
your parent
household.
or your family angry?
Very.
Yeah.
It was like it just became a form of communication.
Yeah.
And you know, when I communicate about this stuff, there's a great love for my parents and understanding about where this stuff has come from, and it's not about like shaming people and being like, because I'm kind of like, it's just, this stuff happens, and I see behaviours in myself now where I'm like, I don't want those behaviours within myself, and I work hard to try and change them. But yeah, anger was a form of communication in my house. It was like, if you want something, you scream. And like, it was screaming. Like, there was a lot of screaming, and that got worse and worse and worse. Like, my mum later came into recovery. Parents got divorced because they don't know each other without alcohol, so that's all they ever knew was that in that relationship. So once you took the booze away, they were like, oh, who are you? I don't know you, I'm off, see you later. And the anger just got worse. It's just like all this rage and letting it out, and I still feel that within myself now. It's like, where's this deep irritation and anger, and so, and I had no way to deal with that. And now that I have a sort of a program, and I've started to have tools to be able to deal with that, it still happens, but I now can get there really quickly to be like, whoa, well, that wasn't,
So
where's that come
say
from?
as a teenager, like let's say 15, 16, what would you have been like? How would you think your friends would have described you?
I actually think, so before, like I'd say the anger actually came a bit later for me, but as a teenager, I think I had people-pleasing tendencies. I think I was very like, yeah, I'll be whatever you want me to be, the actor, if you will. I will fit into whatever box you want me to fit into. I was an attention seeker, constantly like wanting attention from all the wrong places.
Entertaining and...
Yeah. Trying to seek attention from men a lot, older men. But also just like quite a sparkly person as well. Like I was, doing the school plays, and I was the lead in the musicals, and I was getting on okay, but I was hiding all of the other stuff that was going on. I was the masker.
Yeah, so you're kind of like high functioning even at a young age.
Super, yeah.
And then when the drinking start coming a part of... What was you like your first drink?
I ended up insulting my friend's grandfather. I told him to do one. It was his house as well, and I told him to get it. And so I was like, oh, what happened there? But it felt good, because I was like, wow, I was so confident. I I often felt like, because I'd kind of been squeezed into these boxes as a kid of like, you need to look after mum and you need to keep dad happy, that I really struggled to kind of have opinions and commit to them. It was like, I have all these opinions and my mind is working super fast, but I sort of don't want to commit too much because I don't want to make anyone unhappy. So when I had a drink, it was like, yeah, I'm free, I'm opinionated.
I mean, you kind of behaved confident in that by the sound of it, but now you felt it when you had a drink.
Yeah, I felt like, oh, I'm in my authentic being.
Yeah.
I never felt authentic. I always felt like I was trying to just be moulded into whatever the world needed me to be.
It says in the AA book, there's that feeling that we've arrived.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did, and I loved it, and I felt cool. I never felt like a cool person. I always felt like the nerd. Because I loved musicals and Disney, and I was like, yeah, wanted to be on Glee. Like, that was who I was. And I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be like cool. I wanted to be like, yeah, I'll smoke drugs and I'll do all that stuff. And then so when I drank, I felt like, yeah, I can be cool. I can do that.
And so where would you say, so between there and sort of 21, I guess, there was obviously your life was starting to degrade.
Yeah, and when my parents were getting divorced, alcohol became a really bad thing for me because I would just cry. It was the only way to release emotion.
Did you think them divorcing was obviously quite a shocking experience?
It was horrible because I felt like we got mum into recovery. It was like, it's going to be okay now.
Yeah.
And that was when I was like 14, 15. And then it got worse. It was like, how is this happening? And it was two human beings that didn't know each other, didn't have a relationship, living in the same home. And there was a period of our lives where we all lived in our bedrooms. None of us spoke to each other. It was like we're just all coexisting in this home. And
I'd imagine that just was that horrible dark gut feeling that you get in them. I know that feeling.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's just and I was starving myself.
Well, I think it's like
time.
a shock, isn't it? It feels like a shock.
Yeah. What, when it actually occurs?
Yeah.
The thing.
I think people going, that feeling, I think, is a feeling of shock.
Yeah. The ramifications of sort of...
Yeah, and the loss of control as well, and it's all starting to really unfold.
Yeah. And I think a big moment for me was me coming home drunk at the age of 16 or something, dragging my mum and dad out of bed at like 2 o'clock in the morning and being like, I can't live like this anymore, something needs to happen. And the next day my dad left. So I was like, oh, that was my fault.
Oh dear. Yeah.
I made dad leave. Which is not true. No. It's not true. Like, that was there.
Or was it?
Was it? Oh my God, we'd all be happy now.
So, I mean, he obviously couldn't live like that anymore. I don't think any of them could. So what you was experiencing was like really going on.
We were all very mentally unwell at this point. Like, a lot had gone on, and so it was like, there's this chaos. He's gone. Now mum's got to deal with it. Mum's not that... has been sober for a few years. And has her own stuff going on. And so how do you deal with that family?
Yeah, people just stop drinking. It's not necessarily the solution to the problem. I mean, it's a good step in the right direction.
It's fabulous.
But when it comes to that stuff, again, there's a bit in the big book where it sort of likens it to an alcoholic is like a tornado that runs through the life of people, smashing everything up for years. And again, you were living in that destruction. Mm-hmm. And then when they stop drinking, they says they come out of the root cellar and see all of the destruction, but then they think, well, isn't it good that I've stopped drinking? But and I find this quite common in AA, they're not really able to look at the damage. I don't know if they can understand the damage, because again, they're still very much focused on themselves.
Yeah, they're sat at that.
And I think they could get a bit happy with themselves that they've stopped drinking, and they're not really realising the destruction.
Like that, I was in a meeting the other day, and someone said, you don't need to do the steps, you just need to sit in meetings and you'll be fine. I was like, I cannot. I'd be dead. There is no way how I'd still be here.
I think me too. It's never really worked for me, because again, I'm a bit too focused on the destruction.
Yeah. The stuff.
Families do what they did to me, and kind of what I'd done. So again, I'd find, like I think the conversation we was having earlier, I think not many people are willing or able to focus on all the destruction.
And people don't want, we run from pain.
Especially with children, I find that people with children that I work with over the years, there's almost an inbuilt shut-off switch that when they've hurt their children, they don't like to think they did. So you can have like people that's done so much damage. They're like, well, at least I didn't hurt my children. It's like, it's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's not possible for you to drink like that and not hurt your children. You might not have hit them, you might not have abused them, but you got to understand the emotional disconnect is the most damaging thing on planet Earth.
Yeah.
But if you're shut down, they don't even know that exists.
No.
So they have no way of empathising.
I got sober, like, look, it's all good now. It's like, we really have to. And I didn't have to for years. I was focused on my stuff because I went into recovery. So I was like, well, I'm going to focus on my back garden and everything that I've done now because I've got to go make amends to everybody. But it's like later on down the line, I was like, oh, we've got to address what happened. And if we can come from a place of going, that wasn't very nice, then we can build from there.
Yeah. And
we've had a lot of conversations, me and my mother, about what went down and making that amends. You know, is it an apology? Is it whatever? But ongoing conversations that we will continue to have because she is open to discussing those things. But
I think, you know, and again, this is for the parents out there, if you still feel guilty, you've not recovered. And if you haven't recovered, there's still going to be a block in the relationship between you and your child.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to let them close.
You have to admit, you have to have that conversation where you admit, like, I did wrong by you and I'm really sorry for that and I'm going to make sure that I'm not doing it. We kind of
do that, and again, not to sort of personalise it too much, but when we're actually doing workshops and working with people, and I realise that people still have resentments to their parents, because it's a big problem that we discovered, but we say to them, look, can you go to your parents, because this is how you know whether you're forgiven. Can you go to your parents and say to them, Mum, Dad, please forgive me. Please forgive me for being angry towards you. Because I've been stuck in the position of a child for the last 10, 20 years. And I've not seen you as adults that have been struggling, that have had your difficulties, that really did affect me as a child. But my response, even though I was a child, has been anger. I've been judgmental. I've been unforgiving. I've been demanding. I've been selfish.
A bit abusive at times as well.
Very abusive, I should think, at times. But when you actually get people into that, realising that's what forgiveness is, and again, I don't think it's something that you just say, I'll forgive them, and that's the end of it. I think the years of construction layered. But that's proper forgiveness is the foundation to say, look, what made me sick wasn't how they treated me, even though it was wrong. There's no getting away from that. And there's damage. It's been my response to it. And like I was saying earlier, so until I take responsibility back for my development, and it's me being resentful at them that's made me sick, it's me being judgmental at them that's made me ill. And that's why it says, look, we've got these spiritual principles here.
Yeah.
You need, the fact you've not been applying them all your life is what's screwing you up.
Yeah. That step 4 changed my life. Because I consider myself lucky to have experienced this stuff from both sides. I'm kind of glad I went on to be an alcoholic because I got to go and work this stuff that I would have needed even if I hadn't been one of the 4 kids that ended up with the addiction issue, because I still would have been walking around out there like.
How were the other 3 kids, roughly?
Right, they're good.
Did they struggle as much as you?
Yeah, not. 2 of them are kind of just getting on. But everyone needed therapy, everyone needed help, everyone needed something.
Yeah.
One of my sisters suffered anorexia, so it was an eating disorder situation that happened as well. So we all had our own way of dealing with stuff. There was some drugs mixed in there and other behaviours, and anger.
To some people, they're like, no, all the others become like really successful. He's like, bastards.
Yeah, they're all doing incredibly well, like they're incredibly high functioning, intelligent, emotionally switched on human beings, but have an understanding of this stuff. They're around
which
this
I think
stuff.
is a big
That is the big deal.
Yeah.
But that's step 4 for me, knowing that I never looked at my relationships, my part in those relationships. I've never bothered. I was like, oh, people just keep hurting me. And it's like, that does happen in your life. Like, there are people that completely do wrong by you, and you have to admit those in order to move forward, to be like, oh, that was rubbish. I need to have a good cry about that and move forward. Yeah. But also to go, oh, I do have some control over this. I just thought I had no control over anything. I was like, well, I just have to sit here and just let the world treat me like crap. And actually it was like, oh no, if I'd not gone into this relationship with all this anger, if I'd actually it was honesty was the key. I was never honest. It was what I was saying about that I will fit into whatever mould I need to fit into. I was never bringing my authentic needs to any relationship. And therefore I was like, oh, my heart.
No, I think you should try and, again, we all want good outcomes in life. But I think when you sort of have a bit of dysfunction, you don't understand how to process what you're experiencing, and you're not learned to do that, then I think we try and control situations to try and control the outcome, to make sure we get the right outcome.
Yeah, that kind of control.
Yeah, so we're willing to do whatever it takes to manipulate the outcome. But I think ultimately that you learn through the sort of spiritual program and maturity that if you take responsibility for yourself and try and not be dysfunctional and try and do the right thing, you can trust that the right outcome will happen. So you don't have to try and control and manipulate.
Yeah, not in that kind of control. No. It's that I can show up and take action in the way that's appropriate using spiritual principles. I was saying to my partner on the way here with the honesty thing, I went to somebody when I was in East Coast Recovery, and I said, there's a certain tutor, or what we call it, facilitator, that I think has a problem with me. I think they don't like me. I think they think I'm a stuck-up cow. And they went, well, what evidence do you have for that? And I was like, oh, well, they've done this and this. And whoever it was said to me, you should go and tell him that you think that. And I was like, I don't do that, you're joking. And they went, well, do you want to be sober? And I was like, okay, well, I didn't really understand what the meaning of that was, but I went and I spoke to this facilitator and I went, I think you don't like me. And as the words came out my mouth, well, that sounds ridiculous, but anyway, we're going to say it. You sound like a child
when you say it.
Yeah, I think you don't like me. Yeah. And he went, oh no, I like you very much, Issy. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, well, because you did this thing. And he was like, I was just focusing on the rest of the class. I just wasn't focused on you. That action was the beginning of me going, I just need to be honest in my relationships. It was such a big thing for me to do.
No, well, that is. Well, that's a massive barrier to break. Like when you're working with people with dysfunction, that's a massive barrier to break. So you need to go and talk to them. What? I've been doing everything to avoid them all my life.
Yeah.
Or trying to get around it or manipulate. What do you mean go and talk to them? It's like people literally have panic attacks in front of my eyes. Even at the thought, they start sweating and feel like they're going to pass out. I get that quite a lot where people go, I feel like I'm passing out. I feel like I'm passing out.
Yeah. Terrifying.
Because all the fear starts pouring out of them that's blocked them from doing exactly that. Going and just telling someone what you're feeling and take the chance that they're going to reject you or say, well, you do get on my nerves because you are a stuck-up little cow.
Yeah, you go, oh, right then, well, we're just not meant for each other then, I'll see you later.
You can work with that.
Yeah, and that my relationships have become so much easier because of that process, and
so
that's
step
the inventory.
9, sorry, I've got to focus on that because I love that bit, Issy, and I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm glad you got your real good conscious, because that's what step 9 is about. And I think most people don't do step 9. Honestly, in 32 years of being in recovery and talking to like thousands of people, most of them have never understood step 9. Because I tell people, do you know the most important thing I got from step 9 was this: have you got a minute? Can I have a talk to you? You said that I think you think this about me. No, I don't. Oh, that set me free. That ability to say to someone, have you got a minute? Do you mind if we have a conversation? And then make myself vulnerable and tell them how I'm really feeling.
Yeah. And then it becomes a working part of the mind. It's like you don't have to then sit. You know, when you're doing the step 10, when you're doing the inventory every night at the beginning of a recovery, you're like, well, I don't really know why I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then it just does become a working part of the mind. It's like, what have I done wrong? What can I do to sort of show up in this relationship and be like, okay, I did this. I'm really sorry about that. It makes life so much easier. But a lot of people don't have it.
No, the freedom I have now is I can avoid a lot of people because I don't like them, not because they don't like me. No, because it's like being in the dentist waiting room in your head all your life that you don't even know, because it says in the book, it says 9 times out of 10 you actually go and speak to people, and that's what happens. They're like, no.
You've made that up, my friend.
That was in your head.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not.
No.
But at least it gives me the opportunity to adjust myself.
Yeah.
And take responsibility.
Yeah. And if
myself.
I've done something wrong, you know, I've had conversations like that where someone's gone, yeah, well, you did that thing, you bulldozed straight over me, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm sorry, like, I'll make sure I won't do that again.
Yeah.
Setting a healthy boundary.
Yeah. Well, even it does. Even like because it raises lots of questions and moral dilemmas, but you get to work through it all with a good program.
Yeah.
You get to think, well, you know, because the people that they sort of like, they say, well, I don't like you doing that, and then I sometimes think to myself, but that's kind of, I do like doing that. But I like you, so I try not to do it around you.
Yeah.
But again, I think in a healthy way, not in a controlling or manipulating.
Or in a way where I'm completely shirking my responsibilities in this relationship entirely. It's just like, here's my boundary, and you can either be around or not.
Screw off.
Yeah.
Which again, they've got a bit of that, but I think some of that's healthy as well. But again, making compromises and building good communication, I think, like we talked about, I think has been the most difficult thing in a family like mine as well. Mm-hmm. It was mostly shouting or ignoring or...
Yeah. We didn't have so much of the ignoring, actually. To be fair, everything got aired.
Lucky. I'd rather ignoring.
Yeah, that's horrible. Like that, and that's another horrible form of like abuse, isn't it? It's like, oh, now I'm being ignored. But yeah, no, we were very much.
I think it's not the resolving. It's like you know, being around people that seem to like to argue, but not really discuss. Everything turns into an argument. You just never get to the other end. I mean, I was like about 40 odd years old before I felt like my dad actually listened to me. Yeah. He let me finish what I was saying before he interfered, and I was ranting about the council, and I noticed he was just standing there, and even his head went down, because they'd never very offered comfort either or soothing. If I was angry, they'd get angry. There was never, are you okay? What's wrong? Mm-hmm. We can sort it out. There was very little comfort emotionally in my family.
Yeah.
It was like a lot of abuse. But very little. So if I was angry, they would generally respond with anger. And if they were angry, I'd respond with anger. There was not like, are you all right, mate? Yeah. Let's talk about it. Let's give you some comfort. Let's sort the problem out. It always seemed to be into the argument. But the day that he listened to me and he let me finish, and I never felt that before. Yeah. And it was like I actually got to the point. For once in my life, I got to the point.
And how did that feel, though?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was like, because again, it's like, because through that, like I'm a talker, so again, people always say, oh, you like, even now, he's talking too much, but it's like listening to people at the right time, in the right way, can let them get through their process, kind of what therapy is a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. So, again, I don't think you need therapists to do therapy, to tell the truth.
It's just an ear.
It's just,
you just need a giant
and again,
ear.
It's best if that's a bit of a qualified, or a dog, good dog.
Dog, yeah.
I love talking to my dog, he listens. But it's like, not having a go at therapists, by the way, a good therapist is well worth talking to, but it was just that, it's because you're trying to explain something, but you can't, some things you just can't talk quickly. Like I find this recovery stuff, spiritual stuff, there's no quick way of telling someone. And the same with problems. It's like, if you can't some conversations need to go on for years because they're so complex and they're so, you know, and I realise that the buddies that I've talked to for years, we've all become less dysfunctional, and so have our families and the people around us, because we've managed to resolve. But when we resolve the issues, there's usually a nice gift at the end of it. Mm-hmm. One of it is you no longer have to be tormented by it. You don't have to keep tormenting other people by it. But it just felt such a release.
And that's like when people often say to me, like, what was it about, you know, AA gets a good old bashing a lot of the time out there. Like, and I do a lot of stuff on social media, and people like to come at me and be like, why are you doing AA? It's so archaic and like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I actually like to talk about the 12-step program because that for me is where it's at. Like, if you go to meetings, you go to meetings. But where was I going with that point?
About processing.
Which I now can't do, apparently. So my brain's not processing. No. What did you say before that? Can you cut this bit?
No, you don't just have to relax a minute. Like, don't worry about the camera. It's why you were saying that you like the 12-step program.
It's about communication.
About communication.
Oh, that was it. It was about the fact that, and people go, so what was it that you think actually helped? And like, there's a lot of the stuff we've already covered is about a process and all of that. But also, it is that communication. You're with a group of people. The rehab was a massive thing for me because I was with a group of people and we were talking. It's like just speaking. Right back from the beginning of when you come into recovery and you go, oh, if you have a drinking thought, just share it with somebody. And you share it, and it's like the power's just drained out of it. And suddenly you're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just carry on with my day now. It's like using other human beings, whether it's as a mirror or whether just to have a conversation. Or I feel like we're really losing that ability as well in society. That we're not to have a conversation. It's like you say, you have those conversations with your friends and then you're all healing in that process. And I fear that we're losing that completely because I think that was a huge thing for my little brain.
I think because we're becoming more dysfunctional.
Whoa.
I do. I think we're becoming more dysfunctional as a society, not less. Because I think the communication is
breaking down.
And it's being dragged into places where it's just everybody's offended. Mm-hmm. And then then it fractures, and you have to take sides.
Yeah. Why can't we just agree to disagree amicably? I think, and have the conversation. You can't change minds without having the conversation. That's the problem.
But it's not easy. And
what
again,
are you talking about?
the dominant people that are good at arguing tend to dominate.
People,
yeah. And so there's a sort of inhumanity. I think the most dominant force wins. Mm-hmm. And so we even see it in our news papers and things like that it's going very left or right or liberal or conservative, and I think just want to sort of say that again, because just what you said there is, again, that's the belief that I discovered about being the boss of a rehab for, I think the most important thing about rehab that happens is them groups, because I think the groups are more powerful than one-to-ones. I agree. And the reason for that is because I think in a group that you get to, and this doesn't happen anywhere else, you get to take feedback, criticism, but not just from one or two people. I mean, if 20 people are saying the same thing, we used to do, you'd have your bit of paper and you'd tick what your defects of character were. So if 20 people are saying the same thing, well, that's...
God, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Brutal.
That's the stuff that you know that you've got to focus on. But then you had your positives, but then you're giving feedback as well. And like you said, that could be quite daunting, going, the reason I said you need to go and tell that to the therapist, because that's what we believed. And that's what I tell people. Most people, I'm like, well, you have to go and tell them.
Yeah.
You need to go and tell them. Now, they may not be capable of responding.
Nope.
Depends where they're at. But you telling them in the way that the program says to tell them you're also offering them an opportunity to maybe experience a healthy process for the first time in their life. That's the great thing about the program. You're carrying the message to other people, even your family. So you may be the person that's giving everyone else a chance to see what a healthy process is. So now, even going to meetings, you're only getting half of that process because they don't like you getting feedback. It's good to go there and talk, but then people then start... One thing that drives you nuts after like 10 years is everybody in recovery that hasn't been to rehab and hasn't developed that part of them, they just constantly want to talk about himself.
Yeah.
He says, doing a podcast.
I love talking about myself.
Yeah, but we all do. but we all do. And...
yeah, but I'm also really interested in other people.
But that's something I think that needs to be learned. And that's something I've definitely had to learn, and still learning. Even doing this is like, you know, trying to give a nice conversation. Balance, and not jumping around too much. But again, I think, well, by the way, I never went to rehab.
What?
So, but that's one of the things that if people say, what's the best about going to rehab? I say, well, if you learn that, if you learn to get feedback and learn to give feedback, that's the foundation that's going to change your whole life. Because then you're going to learn how to create, because this is about learning a process.
Yeah.
A healthy process to, because all people's problems is just unprocessed data that they're nervous system has taken in, not liked, and now it's stuck there. It's like being constipated emotionally. And then, like I say, it's like you only get so full of shit and then it starts splurting out everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, some of us need a bit of a laxative.
Yeah.
And that's a processing. We need, how do I process these emotions? Well, if I can't even talk about them or take feedback, at best I'm going to keep repeating the same pattern all the time without saying, well, hang on a minute, you're all right up to that point, but then try this. And it's usually do the thing that you don't want to do. Like, look, go and tell them. Mm-hmm. Even if they tell you to screw off, at least you've done something different. Yeah. At least you've faced your fear. At least you've gone a little bit deeper in yourself.
But I don't even think it's just alcoholics.
No,
need
it's
this
dysfunction.
Stuff. Like because I've been so lucky to have got this at such a young age. I've gone off to university with this attached to me, and so when people have spoken to me or they've been like, you know, that whole attraction rather than promotion thing. People see I'm sober and they're like, well, that's weird. I'm gonna have a conversation with her. Because often I can't tell you how many people come to me being like, I've got this issue, I need to talk to you about it, or like I'm maybe with the drugs or with the gambling or with the whatever, and then having conversations about this and giving people tools, not ramming it down their throats because they don't have like a crazy problem, but being like, I've walked people through step 4s that aren't alcoholics and addicts, and I've been told off for doing it because people are like, you can't do that because it's not in the big book. Normal people can't have it. And I'm like, I don't understand that concept personally, but I think all people can use this. And I've given young people those tools, and they're like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's great. It works in all areas of my life. And I'm like, well, why can't we be teaching people that?
I think we should. Well, again, because you know, we had this thing, I don't know if you see that programme on AA that was on the BBC.
I haven't watched it yet.
But again, for me, that was like you're expecting a big slagging off, right? A big putting down. And I watched it, and it wasn't that at all. And actually, that felt like quite an amazing experience. It was like the reverse of feeling traumatized. It was like I felt a little bit de-traumatized because I'm usually used to being abused by the mainstream and because of my beliefs in that. But then when we put it out we did a little program on it discussing that. But then you always get this, people going, oh, it don't work for everyone. Yeah. It's not the only way. And so I wanted to challenge that because they even said it on that program. They said, it doesn't work for everyone. That's a lie. Mm-hmm. It does work for everybody because it's spiritual principles. It's just normal. It's like forgiveness is a principle.
Yeah.
So if you're angry at somebody, you have to forgive. There's no other way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like a principle. And it does work for everybody. Now, you may not want to do it, and that's fine.
But people don't get that far.
Well,
They get to the, it's something about God, and then we have to sit in a room and I have to sit with other people that are nuts. That's where people get, and they go, that's not for me.
Yeah, but I honestly think that's because subconsciously they don't want to deal with themselves. Because again, I think that's all that this program does. And the difference between alcoholics and everybody else is we're just more extreme. Like you've already demonstrated, we're just extreme examples of everybody else. So I also work with people that haven't got addiction problems. It's the same stuff, just a lot easier.
Yeah, it's just
and
not
the reason it's a lot easier,
incessant.
Well, because they seem to have regular folks seem to have more of an ability to understand. Alcoholics and addicts, they hear but they don't understand. There's a real.
That's so interesting.
It's very interesting, and the deeper you go into it, that they just have a real hard time understanding. So you have to keep repeating. They think they do, and even their body language tells you that they're understanding. Mm-hmm. They think they're understanding, but they're not understanding.
They're not hearing. They're listening, not hearing.
You can tell that by the way they're acting and the way they're responding, which is why it's so important to use this program to help look at your responses, because it's your responses that's telling us what you're understanding and what you're believing. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, that's the bit that has to change. So like that with the therapist, when you went and spoke the truth, it changed your belief. That changed everything.
Yeah.
And so what we believe in is important. So we have to check what we're believing in. Does it hold water? Is it true? Is it accurate? Or is it even what we want? You know, it's...
huge questions that I ask myself on a daily basis.
But we've got a program, and hopefully people around you that can help us review that.
Yeah.
Because again, we go through even like growing through our life. It's like, you know, I'm not surrounded myself by people that have practiced this program and spirituality to the amount that I do. So when I'm in a group with dysfunctional people that all seem to be getting on great with each other in their dysfunction.
Yeah, I've struggled with it too, and I think there's been moments where I've struggled to find my place within that, because I've also asked for sponsor. I haven't had a sponsor for quite a long time, because I've tried. People keep going, you need to get a sponsor, and I'm like, okay, I'll go get a sponsor. I try, and then they ghost me. People disappear, and I'm always really interested about how that's happened or what's happened there, because I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. So then I've just sort of got on with my life, and it's not happened. But
well, every sponsor I've had have been very dysfunctional people, and when it come to the stopping drinking, they were brilliant.
And that was what I was just about to say before my brain completely shut down, was that I struggle to sit in meetings and talk about what happened. Like, even in this conversation we've had now, I'm not really going back into like, yeah, that happened, it was rubbish. I drank loads, I ruined my life, destroyed everything, I had to start again. It wasn't great, and my mental health was shot to pieces, and it was gross. And I will talk about that to my heart's content if people want to hear about it, because it makes them feel like they relate, and that's really important as a starting point. But I'm interested in the work. I'm interested in like what we do now to be a functional human being, which I struggle with. I still struggle today. The drink's long gone, but I struggle with life. I just struggle with life, with people, and I have to work really hard. I have to work really hard to be okay. And I say that to people, huh?
Me too.
Yeah. So we got to find what that is. Like, what is that?
Well, I think it says in there. It says, look, it says you're not cured of this problem that I think you were probably born with.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if Lester says so, then I was. Yay.
It says that we're not cured. We have a daily reprieve, depending on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Now, I kind of think that comes down to this. I don't like the darkness in me, or in you, or in the world. Unfortunately, there seems to be a lot of it. Mm-hmm. I never really have problems with people that are not abusing me or doing terrible things to me, whether they're chipping me on the work they're doing, or taking me money, or speaking bad about me, or not pulling out in front of me, or taking my parking space. I seem to get by with a lot of all of that stuff. I'm not good in the darkness. I like the light. I like the spirituality sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. There again, I struggle. I'm not perfect in any shape, form or way. I don't claim to be. I tell people, look, I'm only telling you what I believe are the principles that I'm trying to practice. I am improving in lots of ways. There's areas that's still very difficult. But what I know is that this book says, look, my problem before I come into recovery was I was powerless. I was in the darkness, and so were you. I was confused. It says, but then when I started to, it says then, so your problem, the dilemma is powerlessness. Now, your solution is power. Well, it's like, well, where do I get that power? And I like all the brain scan stuff, because when you're in that bad place and getting angry, with a brain scan, it's all dark.
Yeah.
You've got a closed mind.
Talk about this all the time.
Yeah, your mind will be closed, and it goes dark. You've got no, you're dying. You don't like death. You like to be alive.
Yeah.
And that makes you feel like you're dying. You start struggling and getting angry and frustrated. But as soon as your mind opens again, whenever you let go of what it is, it opens, it brightens up.
Yeah.
And then I feel alive again. I'm happy in that state.
Yeah, lovely.
I'm okay in that mental state. If I can keep my mind open and stop it closing or obsessing, I'm fine. But it's always something to obsess about. I had it last night. There's a situation yesterday, and I thought, I don't feel so comfortable about that. But I kind of pushed it to the back of my mind, and then last night I kept waking up with this thing going around my head, and I'm feeling anxious and vulnerable about this situation. Now I have to apply my program to that situation now, and say, it's going to be all right, or I can do some practical things. There's some things I can do about it. But I think in this world we're living in with so much instability, I don't know anyone even gets on without a program. See, I'm not in danger of suicide. I'm not in danger of depression. I'm not in danger of self-harming. Well, I might go in Greggs and get a Chelsea bun more than I should.
And that is self-harm.
Or a sausage roll. Again, life's not perfect, but I can keep myself at a good level. But the problem with the emotional abuse, it's never gone away. I don't think it ever will, if I'm honest. I think that's life. And I think that's kind of what I was trying to tell you before we were talking. That I think that can be improved greatly. But the truth is, I learn a lot from that as well.
The emotional abuse stuff.
Well, if everything was good, yes.
You wouldn't be constantly working to be going
and I wouldn't know what to tell you when you're going through it, or all the other people that I meet.
I know, and that is what I tell people, is they're like, oh, why am I going through this? And I think, and you can't tell people when they're literally at their rock bottom, like, don't worry, you're going to help someone else later on down the line, but you are. That's what we're all here for, right? We're all sharing experiences and pulling each other along, going, it's all right, we got it.
So I'm very sensitive.
Yeah, same.
And what I think the problem is, I'm sensitive to the human condition, because it's pretty shit a lot of the time. And I think I've got to find a way of living in this world. I've got to find a way of living in this body. I've got to find a way of living in this mind that's been ill-equipped. What I've learned is the more I equip it with my spiritual program, my faith, my belief, that seems to give me a mental defence. And not only that, I get to grow and understand. But I don't think that anything tells me that you're not going to struggle sometimes. But why are you so traumatized about such stupid things? And I think the older I got, I kind of let it go a lot quicker. But again, I'm still hoping that I'm going to find that magic button to push.
Well, if you find it, let me know, yeah.
I'll sell it.
I'm on the same quest, just in
London. Sell it to you at a reasonable price.
Like, what?
No, but that's the exciting thing about being on the journey. It's about the process. It's like all of the family stuff, building relationships. You're getting married soon. That's fantastic, and congratulations.
Thank you.
But that's the beginning of a journey. It's like, say to people, look, the wedding vows, a richer or poorer, sickness and in health, better or worse. It's making that commitment, and you're going to go through lots of different stages. Some are going to be comfortable, some are going to be uncomfortable. But if you keep the communication going, it's enlightening. And you not only work through your problems, you actually grow and develop. And when that happens, you end up in a very richer experience as a human being, because you've managed to go to deep levels of relationship, which I think is all about
with self and other people. Yeah,
because I'm not separated anymore because of my dysfunction, because my parents were not able to create healthy relationships with me, which is sad for them.
Yeah.
And my mum and dad are 84 84, 86, my dad 80. And I'm still trying to build good relationships, but we're a lot more satisfied because we've managed to come a hell of a long way.
And I will never forget, I might have learnt in the rehab as well, was that, I don't know if this is still true, but I heard that people say one of the most common things that people say on their deathbed is, I wish I'd gotten to know myself better, I don't know who I am, who am I? And that for me is one of the big drivers of why I do this stuff, is because I think I'm going to get to know myself as much as I can while I'm here and understand that's the best journey. Marriage.
It's the best. It's another level of humility.
Oh, God.
Because it's nothing going to get you to mirror back to yourself more, I don't think. Because there's nothing more powerful. Or you you just don't get closer to people. Or to marriage, even children, you don't, because there's a different power.
It's a different kind of
balance.
Love. Yeah.
If you to get in a good relationship with another person on that level, I don't think there's anything more powerful that can get you to accept yourself more, because I think that's the childhood damage, that we didn't accept yourself. Look, I'm hard work, I know that, for a lot of people, but when people used to get the hump and walk away from me, I'd think, I wish I could go with them. Now I can't even escape myself with drugs and alcohol.
Oh God, I relate to that
I'm
so
stuck
much.
with myself. But I got the voice in my head that I identify as God, and he said, look, if you're the only person on earth that accepts Lester, then you've done a good job. And again, if I can't accept myself, how can I help you? Because that's your problem and everyone else's. Because if you ain't got a problem with you ain't going to have a problem with me.
Yeah.
If you got a problem with me, it's probably because you got a problem with you and I'm making you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So
that relationship to self.
I think so, because again, I think in finding myself, I also found God. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you can do either of them without the other.
Yeah.
Personally, that's been my experience. Mm-hmm. But I could see it in you. I could see it on you. I could see it in your eyes.
Sorry, my brain I often feel like there's so many thoughts about all this stuff in my brain that I can't actually keep up with them, and then I want to say them all, and then I want to go in 5 different million places. That's why I could literally talk to you for 12 hours. We could sit
Well, I
here
think
and
we've definitely got to do this again, because I think even doing this today, because I haven't met you for quite a while, that this stuff is fast and it is difficult to talk to coherently. I think we've done a great job.
Okay, good.
And I appreciate you being here, because again, I don't get to have this conversation with very many people. Mm-hmm. And so the same, I could talk to you, because again, it's the things that I think you're discovering on your journey is fantastic, and it's so important that you do. Mm-hmm. And it is so important that you share it with other people, because so many people do need to hear this stuff, but it is very complicated, very difficult, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
Most people opt out because they're like, this is a mountain and I can't climb this mountain.
Yeah, we run from pain. Like, we don't want to run towards pain. No one wants to do that. Just crazy people.
And it's the truth is as well, is I think that it's overwhelming, because it's one of the things, again, I always say, I want to do more of these podcasts about what happens when you enter into recovery, because you don't realise you start changing the people around you. Yeah. And if you're trying to stop being dysfunctional, but you're surrounded by dysfunctional people, it has quite an effect. Even in the 12-step fellowship, I felt, as much as it's helped me, I've been quite abused by it. I've always been in the minority because I've always had to deal with my dysfunction. Yeah, and then you feel very singled out, because you think, okay, well, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm not working as hard as I should be because I'm not fitting in with this rhetoric. 9 out of 10 of them are different from me, and so now I must be wrong. Again, going back to the family thing where you feel wrong all the time. Yeah, and I relate to that a lot. And it's taken me years to think, man, dysfunction is a very difficult thing to actually recover from because of the people around you. Yeah. So those questions about how can we all move, if you want to take those relationships with you, because there's a whole thing of, do we just cut it all off and just go, right, I'm done, see you later. That's why I think America's there. What, just America in general? I think America's just everyone trying to get, well, look, I'll say this, look, they have Independence Day. Yeah. Well, it's independence from us, from the English. Fair enough. So in England, we're very dependent, very controlled nation. In America, the whole thing's like independent. Mm-hmm. And they both bring their problems. Yeah, they do. But I think a lot of people that wanted to escape their families went to America. Yeah. Like, that was true for my family.
Mine fled Ireland and came here.
Well, I told my missus, she said, I don't think we moved far enough.
Still, what? Well, in the middle of nowhere?
Because again, it's like, we noticed that my family that stayed in England, it was like, oh, Nan's really sick. Oh, that's a shame. Give them a love. Put the phone down. They never had to deal with they just wanted to get on with their lives, which again, I think a lot of people opt. And if that's what you want to do, that's fair enough. But if you want to deal with this stuff, it's quite a journey. It's a frightening journey.
Yeah, it's
Most
messy.
people don't understand it.
Yeah.
It's difficult. So it takes people of courage, like yourself, to do what you're doing.
Grant me, that's what you said there, grant me the serenity. Accept things I cannot change, the courage.
Courage takes courage.
Yeah.
Acceptance and serenity sounds all hippie and nice.
Yeah, we
and
love
spiritual
that.
and crystally.
Yeah, but you got to do the work. That's the thing. And if I would scream one thing, if I'm doing TikTok or whatever I'm doing, I say, people go, what do I do? What do I do? I'm like, you've got to do the work. You've got to do the work. You can't just like put down drinking drugs and be like, yo, I'm fixed. It's like, what? That I don't relate to that concept. It might be for some people. I don't know. There are people that can stop.
I could never do that.
No, I've got a lot of work to do.
Because was so screwed up.
Yeah.
And I can still be that if I don't work very hard and keep on top of my program.
Life becomes a little bit unbearable, and I don't want
Very
to live
quickly.
my life that way. Yeah, no, and I don't think my partner wants to live life that way either. Like, I have a responsibility to show up and for myself in order to show up for other people, so people could deal with me.
Well, I get a lot better quality person when I
Wow,
show up, and I know that people get on better with me when I'm in a good frame of mind.
Yeah.
And
Which I'm not always as well. Like, and I know we need to wrap up in a second, but I do put the stuff down sometimes, and then I'm like, but luckily I always get to the place where, oh, okay, I feel awful, everything's going wrong, relationships are a mess, what's happened? I put my program down. I'm thinking, oh, I'm better, I'm fine, I'm fixed. I'm not.
no, so it doesn't take the problems away,
No.
but it helps you process them better.
100%.
And it takes the hurt out, because again, it's like this challenging people and having arguments. I think that's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned is, but you have to do that without trying to hurt the
people.
other person.
Yeah.
It's again, my family, we learned to argue, not discuss.
Yeah.
Now I'm happy to have the discussion without the argument. And even if somebody wants to get angry, I can let them get angry without attacking them or shutting them down. Because when you let people do that, as long as they're not getting too aggressive, they process and then they calm down and then you get on with the communication.
And it works.
But I had to learn all of this.
Yeah.
It's not something that was mirrored to me.
No.
And we're trying to teach that to a lot of other people. And I think so, again, I think we're going to have some great conversations about this. I'm trying to get to a place we can put on more workshops about this stuff in recovery.
Great, I'm after it.
I think it's going to be, it's been fantastic with the people that we've worked on. Beyond recovery, dealing with their dysfunction. And it's amazing. A lot of people, they don't need therapy. A lot of people do need therapy. A lot of people don't need therapy. They just need good information. And
Yeah.
somebody to coach them through practicing better ways of dealing with your problems.
Yeah.
They just don't know.
And that's
And,
why I got in rehab, 100%. And I've been looking for something similar ever since. Like, I found rehab for me was such a positive experience. People go, that must have been awful. I'm like, gee, joking. It was the best 4 months of my life.
Yeah.
Because it was like going back to school, but school for the stuff we need.
Yeah.
School for the stuff my brain actually wanted and needed. And I feel like sometimes I'm like, I want to go and have another stint in rehab. Just sit and talk and like hash through this stuff.
I do that on a daily basis by speaking with people.
Yeah.
I do, honestly. It's like, I've never been in a rehab, like, personally, but my whole life can get like that, and processing and learning process. Because again, I think there's a 98% need in our society for this stuff that we're talking about, honestly. If I think in my life, I should think 98% of the people I know do not know this stuff, and they're all trying to live with their dysfunction because they don't know that healing from it is an option. It's a difficult option, but it is an option. And only the very brave are going to take the healing from it option.
Yeah.
Most are going to take the try and learning to live with it option. I can't do that. And God bless them if they can.
Good luck to you.
Good luck to you. Good luck to your little kids. Right, we better wrap up there because I think we've gone on for long enough, but it's been fantastic. I'd definitely like to have you come back and talk about this some more.
100%.
Share
Love
with
it.
us how you're getting on in your marriage, on your new level of humility. I'm sure
Yeah,
you're
no, I
going to get
can't
some
wait. Oh,
incredible
God.
enlightenment from it. I think it's been the best thing in my life. And the greatest by far reward I've got in my life and my recovery is my relationship with my wife. It's my most precious jewel because it has more value to me than anything else. Because I never thought I'd be able to do that because I was so damaged and so lacking as a person the ability to form a healthy relationship where I'm not constantly abusing someone. And it is the goal for me was in my life. I don't want my dog or my wife to be frightened of me. And you can see how big my dog is. And you know what? Because the potential for letting out what can sometimes be in me and doing damage. And I think I don't achieve it 100% of the time, but I think 95% of the time I do. And I thank all the people that spent the time explaining this program, listened to me, and all the people that went before me that figured this stuff out and told me, look, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to stop doing that, you need to start doing this. And
yeah, I agree. That's powerful.
it's
It's
amazing.
emotional.
So, God bless you. Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for listening.